Hello and welcome to the Startups of London podcast. I'm your host Ozan and the founder of Startups of London. Today, I'm joined by Sara-Louise Martin, co-founder of Impact Central. Impact Central is an accelerator for purpose-driven startups. They help you scale your startup, measure your impact, and get investment ready. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me.
So is there a tangible difference, in your opinion, in the way purpose-driven startups function in contrast to profit or growth-driven ones?
Yes, absolutely. I think that purpose-driven businesses have a much more difficult task because not only are they trying to drive a profitable business, but they're also trying to impact a mission. And that mission can be solving a social or environmental problem. So I would say it's doubly difficult to any other type of startup out there.
So what's the reward?
That's a really good question. I would say a lot of the founders that start out in a purpose-driven organization have identified a problem that needs to be solved in the world and have then put all of their passion into creating a product that's going to be of value to customers to help solve the problem. So some of them will be directly answering the problem, or some of them will be making money to create impact and funnel that money to whatever the social environmental cause is that is behind their business. Mm-hmm. And you'll find that you'll never meet more passionate people in the world. These men and women are incredible. I hugely admire them all because they have given up a lot often to do the work that they're doing, and being driven by passion is different than being driven by anything else.
It's a double-edged sword in a way, isn't it? With passion, you get this boost of emotion, boost of energy, and actually that translates into the conversations that you have people with your clients, with your team members. It really fires up the team. So I think that's one of the great things, and that can be an amazing source of resource for a startup. On the other hand, in my experience, and I would like to hear yours, sometimes being very passionate about something can take away from that analytical, data-driven, market research-based, high-quality decision-making. So how do founders balance that, in your opinion? Is that a challenge that you've observed?
I would say that you can be both of those things. You can be passionate and you can be data-driven, and we've seen that through the founders that work with us. So we say that they've got a doubly difficult job because they have to have all the capacity to create a profitable business and also define and measure their impact. So one of the threads that runs throughout our program at Impact Central is the impact side of things. So there's absolutely no point in being passionate if you cannot define what you're passionate about, and if you cannot create a sustainable business around that. So we say that both go together really well, that the passion and the purpose alongside the analytical side of things has got to be there. Otherwise, you don't have a business model that works.
When you want something to really happen, and if and you want to, like, your life depends on it, it's quite difficult from a human psychological point of view to not be biased to see the positive in things, or to have that decisive clinical objectivity when you want something to really happen. How do founders, in your experience, deal with that?
Yeah, it's a really good point. We would say that it's not a failure if you come onto the program and decide at the end that the business model that you've identified for your startup hasn't been successful, because what you've done is you have taken that apart bit by bit, gone into a lot of detail, and as a consequence of that, made a really firm decision that maybe this is not a viable business to be pursuing right now, and that's actually okay. What we have found, though, is that there's a huge correlation between founders who are driven and passionate and founders who have tenacity and also have the skills that are required to be really resilient, because not only are you facing the same types of challenges that other founders are facing, you're also adding another layer of complexity where you're tackling a huge problem that often has systemic roots that are far beyond your control. And that means that you've got to be additionally creative to try and solve for that problem. And I think the way that we've found that work most effectively is for when people develop really strong partnerships with other organizations that are trying to do a similar thing, pooling their resources and skills and creating something else of value. So yeah, great question.
A data that was striking for me, I think I saw this last year, was the year-over-year growth of accelerators, both in the US and in the UK. I'm just trying to find the number, but it doubled every year between 2010 until 2018, I think. Yeah. In some years more than that. So my question, I guess, is when you look at the general startup ecosystem, and I love to think about this ecosystem, and weirdly enough, you were just talking about the Startups of London's Our Businesses first ever viral post was about the Startup London ecosystem for that keyword. So it is something that I and we as a business care about. But that ecosystem has a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
In your opinion, where do accelerators sit in that ecosystem? What is the role they are taking? And how is that maturing? How is that changing year over year?
That's a great question again. I can only really speak about the purpose-driven side of things. So yes, it's I think the indication that there's been an increase in accelerators would suggest that there are more people wanting to test ideas in the world, and that's always a good thing. And I would say that there are various different accelerators for different things. So you've got an incubator for ideation stage, you've got an accelerator for scale, and then you may have also arrangements where you've got an accelerator that also has funding for scale up. We're really interested in businesses that are purpose-driven, have traction, have shown that there is a customer market ready for the product or service that they offer, and they want to take it to the next stage. And I would say that businesses need accelerators because they're so buried in the weeds of running the business that it's often so hard to take a step back and figure out strategically what they need to focus on to take them to the next level. And often that's the role that an accelerator will play. I think the thing that's different about what we offer versus a lot of other accelerators is that we're very high touch. So our program is as bespoke as it probably gets out there, which means that you have a lot of time with us as founders of Impact Central, and you have a lot of one-to-one time alongside the amazing faculty that we've brought on board globally.
Amazing. Can you perhaps go into a bit more detail in that, in terms of what the experience looks like for a startup that joins your cohort? How many do you have a year? What are the key things people should know? What type of startups do you expect, and so on?
So we run 3 programs a year. The next one is in September, and we're actively looking for purpose-driven businesses to come and join that. So the applications are open right now on our website. September, January, and April normally, and we are looking for businesses that have developed traction, so they're generating revenue. Addition to that the people have been able to bring a team around them, so that team might not look like 100 employees or even a couple of employees, but it might look like a few people that you've been able to convince of your vision, mission, and values, and they have caught the passion of that and are supporting you in either a part-time capacity or in a full-time capacity. And then the other thing that we look for is really passion and drive. You can't measure grit until you meet someone and understand their story and understand where they've come from. And we're really passionate about being an inclusive environment for founders of all backgrounds. And we're really proud to say that our diversity stats are really high when it comes to
amazing.
Also gender and ethnicity. So the program is a 6-month program. The first 3 months are the accelerator part. That's your typical accelerator, and that works out at about 2 days a week. So a half day on a Tuesday, full day on a Wednesday, and then an hour on a Friday as a check-in. And we build the program around three key pillars: lead, build, and succeed. So the first part is based on identifying your leadership capability and what your blind spots are, and then how to work through those to get to a place where you're able to lead a team and build a community around you that's going to help to transform the business that you have and take it to the next step. And that also includes defining and measuring your impact, setting your brand strategy, and then the start of your storytelling. And then we go into the build phase, which is very much focused on all of the essentials required to run a business. So finance, accounting, legal, HR, your business model, everything else that you can possibly think of that would come under that heading. And then the succeed part is focused on, okay, well, how do you scale? How do you grow through digital channels? What's your sales strategy? And then how do you pitch? So that then culminates in the most fun event that we host, which is called our showcase event. The next one's coming up on the 14th of July. And that is like the opposite to a boring pitch night. And that's a real evening of celebration. So we bring the founders in, they present. We often have really interesting keynote guests. We've had the likes of David Hyatt from the Do Lectures and Hewitt Denham. We've had amazing people from the world of impact like Sara Cohen and various other people like that. So it's a real fun evening celebration. And then the second part of the program is very focused on, it's much more mentor driven. So you have a bespoke mentor. That mentor is a global leader of some type of business. They have either built their own business or they've been involved in scaling other businesses. And they meet with you individually for 12 weeks. And then also through the second part of the program, we run a funding boot camp. So we say that by the end of the 6 months, you should be investment ready. And then the other brilliant part of our organization is that we have two sister companies, Chorus Angel Network and the Opto Impact Fund. So the idea would be that successful businesses might get an introduction to the investment committee at Chorus. And then if they went through the due diligence and the investment committee decided that they were a business that was ready to scale, then they would put resources behind them to put them onto the investment platform. First of all, do all the due diligence to ensure that all the ducks are in a row, and then bring suitable impact-driven investors around them to help scale their business further. So that's the 6-month program in a nutshell. The first part is very intensive, and then the second part is a bit lighter touch in terms of contact time with us as an organization. So you have just 1 hour a week with your mentor, and then you have a check-in with us, and then once a week as well. So the first 12 weeks is the busy part. The second is a bit more manageable when you're also running your business at the same time.
Got it. Amazingly detailed, very good summary of so I had a few questions, but I didn't want to interrupt you because you've answered them all, especially about funding. Some people are seeking a way to money. I think it's just like see accelerators and incubators as a tool for that. Some are seeking knowledge, some are seeking contact with other people and just more
community. And I think it's a really good point. The main problem that we come up across is that founders think that they only need funding and then all the problems will be solved. But if they only needed funding, then they would be funded already. And so often it takes a bit of time for the penny to drop that they may need to think through how they have built their business so far. There may be some simple changes that they can make that will actually make the world of difference in terms of being an investable option. And also not to underestimate, as you have mentioned, the community aspect. So the peers and the value of peers going through this program together. I mean, that's one of the brilliant things that all of our founders will say as they come to the end of the program. It's been incredible to go on this journey with someone else, because often being a founder can be quite lonely and you're battling away. It's pretty hard. There's lots of things to overcome. It's really encouraging to be with people who are going on that journey with you and also can empathize with the different things and may have already gone through what you've gone through. So can say, oh, have you thought about checking this out or this out? And we're building an exciting community, and we have over 50 founders that we've worked with now since 2018. And everyone has access to each other through a private Slack channel. And that has been an incredibly fruitful way for them to connect and push each other forward.
I don't want to name names, but I've had an experience, startups of London and myself. We were part of a cohort for a very well known one of the most well known incubation slash programs, and it was the London chapter. But my experience there has been thoroughly negative, and I dropped out
Okay.
from the program. It came down to an issue of, yes, the program itself made a lot of sense. It was well designed. There was a lot of good collaterals in terms of what startups should do, structure, etc. But when something really grows and the people who are running it are not genuine like yourself, and I honestly think you're genuine with everything that you said, and I've been looking at impact ventures as well. But when that part of it is missing,
Yeah.
everything coming together cannot make it work, because the relationship you have with the founders in your cohort, the way you see them, is really different. I don't think these people, founders, should be seen either as sources of money or as students, because they are neither. And it's about seeing them as individuals who are trying to make an impact and at the same
Yeah.
time build a profitable business. And I
Exactly.
feel like you really get that.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, we've all of us. I'm one of three co-founders. I've got two amazing co-founders, Gordon and Ian, and we've all had different experiences in different organizations. And as we were building Impact Central, we were really passionate about the values that we created, which you can see on our website, and that being genuinely caring towards people that came onto the program was a huge part of what we wanted to create, because that's actually what makes a difference. There's that quote: people will forget you, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. And
That's so true.
have having considered empathy and understanding for and meeting someone with where they're at will often be a really good starting point to build a really strong relationship. And we want to have relationships with our startups through the lifetime of their business, because we know that it's going to take longer for impact-driven startups to scale. And as a consequence of that, we want to offer to be a support network as they do that for however long that takes. And we have some amazing businesses that have come through our program and are now out there in the world making loads of money and also creating huge change. And that's what we want to see. I think sometimes people might feel a bit funny about, oh, I want to do something that does some good in the world, and they feel uncomfortable about the fact that it also might make a lot of money. But I just think that's nonsense. If you're creating something of huge value and people want to pay for it, then your reward is that they're doing so. Sometimes that little detail people get a bit kind of hung up on.
And if you have more money, it doesn't mean that you have to spend it on supercars and yachts and so on.
Exactly.
You can actually use that money to build a second, third, fourth startup
Yeah.
and use that philanthropically, or like it's just an amount of capital, a resource
Yeah. And
that you
we
can
would
leverage.
say that, the better your business does, the bigger the impact that you're able to have. So if you feel initially uncomfortable about being able to make money, then focus on the fact that you're going to be able to create more change. And I think when
Yeah,
people get their head around that, then that's a really powerful thing.
exactly. And this brings me to my next point, which I think is about funding, and I would like to ask your thoughts on that. But before, let me segue with two angles. One of them is, I've seen a LinkedIn post a few days ago about Adam Newman, the founder of WeWork, and I think he got another round of funding from Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, and it's about a crypto ledger of some sorts for carbon credits. So now I actually like the idea of some sort of a blockchain based ledger where you can keep track of carbon credits and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, the sentiment towards the fact that he got funding was overwhelmingly negative. Um, and how things have changed in the last 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So that's one angle. And I think that I agree with the sentiment of people in a way, which is okay. A growth-driven startup first seems counterintuitive rather than a profit-driven startup.
Yeah.
But once you get into it, you understand, okay, this can make sense in theory and so on. It's always in the future, but okay, it makes sense in some of ways. It doesn't, but it's I think not impossible to digest that logic of things. But things have escalated to such a point that a lot of startups really do not care about profitability at all, at no point, and it's just about getting investment money and getting the next chance. So it's turned into this game of funding and investment raising between startup founders and investors. So that's one angle of the general sentiment and way of things that I think is different in 2022 versus 2015 or like the 2010.
Yeah.
The second angle I would like to lay in front of us is at the beginning of this year, I'm sure you've noticed there was a huge market crash. There still is a huge market crash. Like Amazon stocks are down 35%. And it's a bloodbath out there, like the Nasdaqs and all of the individual stocks. The crypto market is bad as well. So this is seen as a big bubble bursting again. And that had indirect effects of a lot of people speculating, and from credible resources, that the funding ecosystem will be very different this year for startups. It's going to be much more difficult to get funding. So these are the two angles that I wanted to share with you in asking the question, like, what are your thoughts about the general landscape of startups seeking funding? How is it changing nowadays? And what are your personal thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would say that I'm not an expert in crypto or anything like that, so I don't really feel like I can comment or add a huge amount of value in that regard. I think it's very different seeking funding for a purpose-driven business than it is seeking funding for a non-purpose-driven business. It's a completely different game. And I would say that there is definitely more appetite for investors wanting to invest in purpose-driven organizations. I think the difficulty is that there's still a level of skepticism and the skepticism I think really sits because investors are expecting a return in the same time frame often as another business that's not purpose-driven. And what we would say is that it is entirely possible to get those returns. It just might take a slightly longer amount of time, not much, but just a bit. Mm-hmm. And we really passionately feel that the more purpose-driven businesses that are out there getting that first SEIS or EIS level of funding, that first slug or first couple of rounds, if we can increase the volume of businesses at that stage, then there's going to be more opportunity for those businesses to grow over time and contribute a lot more, and also for people to be able to get their investment back, and also they're going to be creating huge amounts of change. So we want to see more volume.
You're still optimistic that the landscape is still decent in terms of gaining funding.
I think you have to be optimistic, and I think the other thing is nobody really knows. So we know what the news is telling us, but the news is never going to be good because that doesn't sell papers, does it? We know what the news is telling us. Kind of feel like in these uncertain times, it's a really good opportunity to pivot or to just keep your head down and keep going. And I think that's what we are suggesting to our founders, that, you know, what is inside your control and what is outside your control. And if you can focus on what's inside your control and try and keep your head straight on that and focus less on what's outside your control, then you'll still keep moving forward. And that's the most important thing.
That's amazing. There are times when it is a good time to quit a startup, and there's a time to perhaps take your losses and like say goodbye to the sunk costs and move on. Has there ever been a case where you have or the organization has Impact Central has advised any startups in that direction, saying like, look, this was a good fight, well done, but it's over?
We would never force that opinion on a founder. I think I said previously, there have been founders that have come to us and have said, you know, after working really, I can think of maybe two, after working really hard on their businesses, they came to a point themselves where they realized that the numbers just weren't working for them. And as a consequence of that, they decided to do something differently. And we do not see that as a failure at all. We see that as a really good investment of their time. And also, it's a really brave thing to do, because
it is,
you know, that doesn't define anybody. It doesn't.
It's an amazing experience it gives you so much. It takes away, but it gives you so much in return as well.
And so many people can be armchair philosophers getting a salary every month from an employer and don't necessarily have any insight or clue as to how incredibly difficult it is to start, maintain, run and scale a business. Because when you are a founder, you cannot switch off because you're always thinking about the next thing. What is it that what fires are you fighting today or in this actual hour, or what do you need to do, and so it's all consuming, and to be able to do that for any amount of time is a huge privilege. Like, there's so many people in the world that don't get the opportunity to do that because of the circumstances they find themselves in. So I just think anyone that's starting a business is hugely brave, and braver still to walk away from it if they've identified that it doesn't work for them any longer.
Sarah, this has been an amazing chat. Thank you very much for joining in. For the people who have listened to us out there, it's impactcentral.co.uk if you'd like to visit their website. And I honestly think you're one of the genuine ones out there as an organization that really does look at this as a way to create positive impact in the world. Startups.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Startups, I think, are I think this was Nassim Taleb who said it. Although I disagree with him in a lot of ways, P30L has been one of the people who have pointed this out as well, as startups are change engines of the world. They are the things in this economy in 2022, in this day and age we are living, to create any kind of a change. It's a good bet. It's a way to nudge society in ways, create value for people, solve problems, increase wealth, but not just wealth in economic terms, but wealth in education, wealth in well-being, wealth in psychological health, and in other areas of life as well. So I hugely admire founders who do it, and I hugely admire people who help them in that direction. So thank you for everything that you've done, Sarah, and I wish Impact Central the best in the coming years.
Thank you so much.